She stepped into your life like a dream stitched together from everything you ever longed for, but never dared to expect. She mirrored your soul, echoed your fears, and made you feel chosen, as if the universe had finally decided to reward you for all your past heartbreaks. Her words dripped with intimacy, and her confessions felt sacred. You thought you'd found something rare, something real, but what you found was an illusion carefully crafted to enslave your mind. There was no coincidence in how quickly she opened up. That vulnerability wasn't genuine. It was a calculated move, a psychological snare. She told you things that felt too personal too soon, weaving a narrative of trauma and depth to spark your empathy, to disarm your instincts, to bypass your logic. You were not falling in love. You were being lured into emotional captivity. You see, this isn't about two people navigating differences. This isn't about miscommunication or unmet expectations. This is a psychological chess game played in silence and shadows, where intimacy is the bait and control is the prize. The covert narcissist doesn't aim to love you. She aims to possess you, to absorb your identity until your existence revolves around soothing her chaos and validating her grandiosity. Her vulnerability isn't a bridge, it's a trap. Every tear she sheds is a thread binding you to a responsibility that isn't yours. You begin to carry the weight of wounds you didn't inflict. You morph into her caretaker, her therapist, her emotional crutch, while your needs disappear like whispers in a storm. She teaches you that your strength must always be in service of her fragility. And just when you're convinced you're indispensable, she shifts. The woman who once adored you begins to withhold affection. She critiques you subtly, praises others conspicuously. But the cruelty is never constant. It comes in waves, broken up by fleeting moments of affection that keep you craving, keep you believing, keep you trapped. This cycle, this psychological addiction, isn't random. It's the architecture of your undoing. Your brain, seduced by moments of euphoria and crushed by moments of neglect, begins to betray you. You find yourself chasing her affection like a gambler betting on a fixed game, thinking the next hand might just turn things around. You aren't in love anymore. You're addicted to the idea that you can bring her back, the version she sold you in the beginning, the ghost of who she never truly was. But the real masterpiece is in the confusion. She'll provoke you and then call you unstable for reacting. She'll retreat into silence and punish you for not knowing why. You begin living in a world where the rules are unspoken and ever-changing, where the truth is what she says it is, and your reality becomes negotiable. You start to censor your voice, not because you're weak, but because your survival now depends on avoiding her storms. She doesn't hit, she doesn't scream. Instead, she twists your words, your memories, your perception of self. When you bring up the pain, she calls it drama. When you show emotion, she calls it weakness. When you ask for clarity, she brands you as controlling. The more you try to find common ground, the deeper you sink into her narrative where you are always the one at fault. And then she strikes where it hurts most. She takes the sacred pieces of your soul, the secrets you entrusted to her, the stories you never told another, and turns them into ammunition. What once felt like intimacy now feels like betrayal etched into your bones. She becomes the architect of your pain, sculpting emotional torture from your most vulnerable confessions. The beauty of her manipulation is that it feels like your failure. You think if you were more patient, more loving, more understanding, maybe things would go back to how they were. You don't see that she never existed, only the role she played to capture you. The more you give, the more she takes. And yet, you stay because leaving would mean accepting the illusion. She draws the boundaries, not in sand, but in concrete. Her space is sacred, her time unquestionable. Yours? Open to scrutiny, to invasion, to erasure. You adapt, you shrink, you become smaller so her comfort can grow. You forget what your own boundaries felt like, what your own needs sounded like. You are no longer a man with desires. You are a vessel for her emotional convenience. You start to lose things, subtle at first. Your laugh doesn't come as easily. Your sleep grows restless. Your friends fade into distance. The hobbies you once loved now feel foreign. You look in the mirror and don't see a man. You see a shape molded by someone else's hands. She's not stealing your time. She's erasing your identity, one compromise at a time. And yet, you still want to believe, because what else do you have? The idea that someone who claimed to love you is orchestrating your destruction is too painful to fully accept. So, you rationalize, you minimize, you blame yourself. The poison she feeds you now comes from within your own thoughts. That's the final phase, when she no longer needs to control you, because you've learned to control yourself on her behalf. She will tell you you're overreacting, that you're too sensitive, that you're imagining things. And because you've been taught to doubt your instincts, you believe her. The silence becomes normal. The anxiety becomes background noise. The pain becomes proof of your devotion. You've been taught that love is endurance, that love is sacrifice, and so you suffer in silence, calling it strength. But here's the truth. What you're enduring isn't love. It's psychological warfare, a campaign to strip you of autonomy, to bury your self-worth beneath layers of manufactured inadequacy. Every "you're too much," every "you're not enough," every passive-aggressive sigh is a blade cutting deeper into your spirit. She plays the role of victim so convincingly that even when you scream for help, others will see you as the aggressor. Her pain is performative, yours is invisible. And that isolation, being surrounded by people who don't see what's being done to you, is the most insidious part of her power. You weren't weak. You were chosen precisely because of your strength, your empathy, your depth, your desire to protect. She didn't break you because you were fragile. She broke you because you were whole, and that wholeness was a threat to her control. But now you know. And knowledge changes everything. The spell begins to fade when you see the pattern, when you realize that her love was not love at all. It was control dressed as compassion, domination disguised as devotion. You can't unsee it now. You don't need to scream your way out. You don't need to prove she's wrong. You only need to reclaim yourself, not with rage, but with clarity. Not by confronting her, but by confronting the silence within you that allowed her to stay. You were never meant to live in chains woven from false promises and weaponized affection. Your soul was not designed for submission. There is still a you beneath the damage, a man who remembers what it means to walk in truth, to stand in sovereignty. That man is still there, waiting, watching. And when he rises, nothing she ever did will hold power again.